There's nothing like a good walk around the White House grounds. Besides, I wanted to go out there for the last few times before my term is up. See everyone, everything, and of course, say goodbye to my very good friend Pete the Squirrel. He started following me one day on my walks. Since then, we've had some nice little chats. Well, I talk. Old Pete doesn't say too much. I once said that if a man wants a friend in Washington, he should get a dog. But old Pete has been just fine. He's good company, and he has never once broken my trust. Still have some papers to pack away before I leave office. Not sure why I didn't do it sooner. Rose, can you bring those papers in here to my office? Oh, they're already on my desk. Thank you, Rose. I remember this. It was the speech I gave to the NAACP back in 1947. You know, that was the first time any president had ever addressed that organization. My mother didn't like it, though, because I quoted old Abe. She was a real unreconstructed rebel, my mother. Never was able to stand Abe Lincoln at all. But, as I said in a letter to my sister before I gave that speech, I believe what I say, and I'm hopeful that we may implement it. Now, my mother-in-law didn't much care for it either. But then again, she never much cared for anything I did. Seemed to think that even after I became president, I still was just not good enough for her daughter. Behind every great man, there is a proud wife and a shocked mother-in-law. That was certainly the case with me. There's just no pleasing some people. I was rather proud of that little speech. Listen to this. Every man should have the right to a decent home, the right to adequate medical care, the right to a worthwhile job, the right to an equal share in making public decisions through ballot, and the right to a fair trial in fair court. We must ensure that these rights are on equal terms enjoyed by every citizen. To these principles, I pledge my full and continued support. I was the first president to really champion civil rights. In fact, the term was first coined during my administration. I always believed that everyone should have an equal chance to make something of themselves. This probably started back in World War I, when I commanded a unit that was predominantly Irish. And despite the fact that I grew up in a region full of prejudice against them, fighting alongside those Irish lads proved to me that everyone deserves an equal chance, even people we may be prejudiced against. First became aware of the seriousness of the civil rights issue soon after I took office. There had been an appalling number of lynchings and shootings of black soldiers and their families after they returned from the war in Europe and the Pacific. I knew that I had to do something. As I said to Congress on February the 2nd, 1948, if we wish to inspire the peoples of the world whose freedom is in jeopardy, if we wish to help those who have already lost their civil liberties, if we wish to fulfill the promise that is sure, we must correct the remaining imperfections in our practice of democracy. We know the way. We need only the will. I decided one of the first imperfections I would tackle would be gaining civil rights for those who did not have them. Later that year, I said to an assembly in Harlem after receiving the Roosevelt Award, eventually, we're going to have an America in which freedom and opportunity are for everyone. There's only one way to accomplish this great purpose. That is working for it and never taking a backward step. Perhaps my greatest action on behalf of minorities in America was when I enacted Executive Orders 9980 and 9981. With these two documents, I simultaneously integrated the armed services and the federal workforce. Executive Order 9981 is probably the better known of the two. It states, "It is hereby declared to be the policy of the President that there shall be equality of treatment and opportunity for all persons in the armed services, regardless of race, color, religion, or national origin." When I enacted the two executive orders, I encountered intense opposition, not only from the Republicans, but also from certain elements of my own party, who termed themselves the Dixiecrats. Civil rights movements were not at all popular at that time, and I knew such an action could cost me the White House in the upcoming election, but I went ahead and did it anyway. And, despite the best efforts of my opponent Dewey, which, between you and me, wasn't saying all that much, I still made it back to the White House for a second term. Thanks to Executive Order 9981, the military became almost fully integrated by the end of the Korean War. When I enacted Executive Orders 9980 and 9981, I said this about them. This nation of ours is great because of its diversity. We are bound together by the ideals of human brotherhood. Not all of my military leaders were very happy about it, though. Some of the generals said that segregation would only end in the military after it ended everywhere else, and even tried to dodge by saying my executive order did not expressly forbid segregation. Now, one of them was Omar Bradley, who I prefer to think of as a great and highly intelligent man. He's a Missourian, like me. But here, he was flat wrong. He even tried to tell me that the military was no place for social experimentation. Well, I told him that I did intend to desegregate the military, and that was the unmistakable purpose of Executive Order 9981. This was a stand I was taking, and I knew history would remember me for it. The buck stops here. Now, the Air Force was much more cooperative. Air Force Secretary Stuart Silington, also a Missourian, presented a plan to me to assign black soldiers based on merit alone. Got something here you should see. This is a photograph of me with Staff Sergeant Edward Williams, a black Air Force officer from St. Louis, Missouri. I met him by chance on one of my morning walks, and he told me just how much my integration of the armed services had meant to him. It is a great thing for any leader to see how his actions can help out the common people. I am proud to have had such an impact on the lives of those black soldiers, on the lives of all those soldiers serving in the United States military. Roy Wilkins, the administrator of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, even wrote me a letter this week in which he expressed his high opinion of my civil rights work. I just replied to him today, and I said that a substantial change, respect for human rights, is fundamentally a thing of the mind and heart. As a government, we must take the steps that improve human rights. As a people, we must feel deeply about them. Well, Eisenhower will soon be sworn in as president, and it will be my time to step down. I've been working on my farewell address that I'll give next week, and there's one part of it I've been working on right now. So as I empty the drawers of this desk, and as Mrs. Truman and I leave the White House, we have no regret, period. We feel we have done our best in the public service, period. I hope and believe we have contributed to the welfare of this nation and to the peace of the world. Yes, sir, that says it. We've done well here. Hello, boss. I'll be out for dinner in just a moment. That was my wife, Bess. It's dinner time. Well, I better head on out. Oh, I almost forgot. Nuts to you, Pete.